are back here at Philadelphia's World Meeting of Families at the Pennsylvania Convention Center. I'm Doug Keck, joined on set, of course, by Jeanette Bankovic, and we'll have some guests we want to get to in a minute or two. Obviously, we welcome all of those who've been watching our wonderful coverage of the papal visit so far with Raymond Arroyo and his crack team out of D.C. And, of course, earlier, Jeanette, we saw the actual installation or canonization, basically, of Juniper Serra.
Yes.
And very, very important. I thought this was a great quote that the Holy Father has at the end of his talk. He says, Father Serra had a motto which inspired his work in saying he lived this life, keep moving forward. For him, this was the way to continue experiencing the joy of the gospel. There you hear the Holy Father get that in there. To keep his heart from growing numb, from being anesthetized. He kept moving forward because the Lord was waiting, kept going because his brothers and sisters were waiting, kept going forward to the end of his life. Today, like him, we may be able to say forward, let's keep moving forward. And one of the things I wanted to say about that just quick was we have a wonderful documentary that was called Ever Forward, Never Back, which we're running at the same time, and people should check that out, watch it on EWTN, and maybe even get it from EWTN's religious catalog. I know this is a shameless plug, but it's a very good program, and we're very, very proud of it. We think it ties in perfectly with the canonization as well as with the comments of our Holy Father.
Yeah, you know, that slogan, that statement, that quote could well be the qualifier for today, right? Keep moving forward. We look at situations that we face every day in our personal lives, and then we look at our corporate life together within the culture of the day, and we wonder how we're going to make it through. And here we have the wisdom of our new saint telling us what to do. Keep moving forward. Keep going through the power of God, through the power and the witness of the Holy Spirit.
Right, it's not walking ahead of God or walking, but it's continuing to strive even when it seems like the world's lining up against us, right?
That's right.
Now, coming up in about a half an hour or so, we're going to have our next keynote address, and this one, obviously, a very popular speaker, certainly here in the United States, Professor Helen Alvaré will be talking about creating the future, the fertility of Christian love. So stay with us. That's coming up in about a half an hour. But we have some wonderful guests we'd like to get to right now. We're welcoming the executive director of the Culture Project, a local Pennsylvanian, Christina Barber. Welcome, Christina.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us what the Culture Project is all about. It sounds fairly new.
It is. We're only a year old. And basically, the Culture Project is an initiative of young people that are set out to restore our culture. That's a really big, lofty goal, vision, but the main way that we're trying to do that is through promoting virtue. So really addressing the main issues of our world today. I love that quote about moving forward. We're trying to move forward in hope. So presenting the church's timeless teachings on marriage, family, life, sexuality to a secularized world. So we're trying to be relevant and addressing these topics of today, but with the timeless tradition of the church. So sexual integrity, chastity, purity, human dignity, respect, those are the key messages that we promote.
Well, those are certainly messages that we all need to hear today.
That's for
and,
sure.
and those kinds of messages do give us hope. It breeds hope in the human heart because when we begin to live according to that pattern, we begin to experience that abundant life in Jesus Christ and the joy that comes with that. And you are a joy-filled woman. I can see that in you.
I hope so.
Oh, I can see it. It radiates forth from you. So tell us a little bit about how this whole concept came into being.
Well, I mean, the family, so it's funny because we're here at the World Meeting of Families, but in my family, I grew up in a really great home in which my parents just did simple little things in the faith and invited my siblings and I in. And I got to grow up in a school of love, which I didn't realize until I got much older is actually rare today. And so actually in my college days at Penn State, I realized that it was rare that I had two parents that were actually still together, happily together, and forging a future for our family. So I learned a lot of core values, and I got involved in the pro-life movement and also the chastity movement, and giving talks and presentations for some years. And that was really great, great work. But I was realizing that we were missing the piece of identity, like that one niche, and that many even young men and women that wanted to be good and to choose the good and the beautiful didn't have family experiences like I did, and that was rare and unusual. And even in the young adults, like the good young adults, they were lacking that basic formation, basic understanding of who they were as a man or as a woman. So the Culture Project is really a response to that. So the important messages of chastity and pro-life are still fundamental, but what we do is we try to live in community. So we have like pillars. We live in community. It's community, prayer, formation, and work. So our work, our ministry, our presentations is merely an overflow of those other things. So we live in community, we practice virtue in community, we pray. Jesus is the source, the summit, the center of our life. We have a sacramental life. We make a commitment to daily mass, daily Eucharistic Holy Hour. And then we also, formation is also key. So we spend a lot of time forming our team, our missionaries, before they go out. So we have 2 months in intense formation, community life, human formation, spiritual formation, intellectual formation, and then we go out and do our work, our mission from that point. But those other elements I found to be really key and lacking in other initiatives that I've seen around.
Now, you're fairly young, and obviously you're highly motivated, as Jeanette said, and you've got wisdom clearly beyond your years. But as far as the formation, how do you rely on the formation? How do you know that you're trying to do the right thing? There's so many people out there trying to do the right thing, but it can be tricky. So you got to make sure the formation is correct and the organization. How do you make sure what you're doing is the right way of doing it? What's your support from the church?
That's really great. So we're really blessed because a few very wonderful key bishops have come in and supported us early on, one being Archbishop Chaput here in Philadelphia. So that's a good kind of litmus test to know you're in the right path. But also there's a great community of Benedictine monks, the monks at St. Vincent Archabbey in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and my longtime spiritual director, so I've been with him for 12 years now, has really helped me in my formation, but also has embraced the whole team, the whole community. And so they kind of help us, guide us, oversee. We're looking at the church's teachings for years. So the rule of St. Benedict is something that we take and apply to our community life. So that's proved, and those monks help us in our formation. And then we also have other experts in different areas, like different fields, that actually come and spend time with our missionaries and our team and impart their knowledge with us.
What do you mean by community life in reference to the fact that you're laity?
That's a really great question. So our missionaries take a commitment to join us for just 1 year at a time. A lot of people, we're only 2 years, we're entering our second year, so a majority of people actually signed up for a second year, which is exciting. But it's only 1 year at a time commitment, and our community life, we have men's households and we have women's households. And it's simple. We just live together, we pray together, we go to mass, we live a sacramental life, we work together in the mission field, but we also have community dinners, time together, and it's basically just it's like family, the way our families are meant to be that little domestic church, that school of love. So our communities are just those intentional little households between men, women, and then coming together in which we learn a little bit more about who we are, and we try to practice what we're preaching. And community life is a great way to learn about yourself. It's that mirror, right? You look in and you see all of those things.
It's a great opportunity for purification, isn't it?
It most certainly is. Our missionaries often say that community life is the best and the worst part of this mission.
And how many in a household would there normally be? How many women in one house?
Sure. Between 3 to 5 women and men in each household. So.
Now, is it while you're there, or do you take some sort of vow of saying, I'm not going to date people outside the group, or I'm not going to date people in the group, or how do you deal with that?
Question.
How do you deal with that?
I love that question. So all of our first year missionaries take a dating fast. So that year, dating is off the table for them completely. So they can focus on the mission and also be present to their brothers and sisters in a way that's clear. Because when you live in those close communities, you have to be clear. And then within a team living in close proximity, we don't have couples that are dating. So to get that freedom.
And what is the mission work, Christina?
That's a great question. So we do whatever we can to encounter the youth. We're all about encounter. We give mostly presentations in schools, grade schools, parishes, high schools, university campuses. We also have a strong presence on social media because those are the streets of today. So Facebook, Twitter, we are there with beautiful images, messages of hope. But wherever we can encounter the youth, we're there. So our missionaries are trained to give presentations on human dignity and sexual integrity, chastity. Those are our key messages. And then we also do follow-up visits to schools where we do Q&A sessions and mentoring sessions as we can with some of the youth to follow them along.
Now, we're here at the World Meeting of Families, and there's wonderful apostolate. You walk through the hall. It's unbelievable, the wonderful Catholic work that's out there. How do you see your organization fitting into that? Are you preparing men and women, in a sense, for their ultimate vocation, whatever that happens to be?
You get it. You just get it. That's a big part of what we're doing. So we do go and plant the seeds to many thousands of youth, tens of thousands of youth a year, which is great. But our big work, our main work is really within our missionaries. It's within ourselves. So it's each of us taking steps in virtue to become the men and women we're created to be. So I really think our greatest work is actually within ourselves, within our formation. And it's like remote marriage prep. It's remote vocation prep. It's really kind of healing some of those wounds, getting some more formation. And I think the real impact of the Culture Project is going to come in years to come. Hopefully when people are making their vocational discernment decisions, they'll be a little more equipped to live their faith joyfully, vibrantly, and to be able to also answer the really hard questions of today. We take a lot of time and formation on the tough issues of today because we need to eloquently and lovingly be able to defend the church's teachings.
I'm thinking of a beautiful quote by St. John Paul II, where he said, "Today we need heralds of the gospel." He goes on to describe what he means, but he concludes by saying that men and women who bring the gospel but yet are contemplatives in love with Jesus Christ. And isn't it the truth that everything is Blessed Teresa of Calcutta says, everything starts from prayer. So if we don't pray, if we don't have that close relationship with the Lord, if we're not being filled with His divine life, then we have nothing to offer.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, and that's why prayer is one of our key pillars. I mean, our missionaries, with their commitment to daily Mass and daily Eucharistic Holy Hour, frequent reception of confession, spiritual direction whenever possible, without those things, we wouldn't be able to do it.
When you go and give talks at these various locations, obviously there's going to be a difference between what you talk about at a grammar school, a high school, or a college level. What would be an example if you were going to let's say a Catholic, I'm assuming it'd be a Catholic grammar school?
Okay. Primary schools for sure.
So what would your focus be when you're talking about culture as a young person?
Well, basically spending time on human dignity and identity. So basically that you were created out of love, for love, that there's a purpose. You were made in the image and likeness of God. He has a great plan for you. It's amazing. Already we're seeing some of the results of the effects of our cultures with like test tube babies and all kinds of things like that. And so people have a lot, especially that younger generation, have a lot of insecurity and uncertainty about who they are and if their life really has value, purpose, meaning, because they weren't created out of love in the traditional way. Obviously, God was present and they were created out of His love. But so those key concepts can be expressed at a very young level, and even in Catholic schools or not in Catholic schools. Just depends on the language that you use. So I like to think of us as unabashedly Catholic, but presenting the faith little c Catholic versus big C Catholic. We start with the little c universal principles and then invite people into the richness and the fullness that the church has to offer.
You know, as you're sharing about that reality, I think that that's probably one of the central messages for today. One of my favorite scripture passages is Ephesians 1 verse 4. God chose us in Him before the world began to be holy and blameless in His sight, to be full of love. And when we think about that, you know, it means that we were always intentioned by God to have life, you know, from before the very first aspect of creation ever happened. And there I think the apostle is saying, from all eternity, God knew who He would create, and He chose to create you. Is there anything more powerful than that? I think that that can just absolutely transform a heart, transform a mind that fast.
I agree. And that's, I think, where the great wound is today. There's a doubt of that. So we just have to keep speaking that truth out as much as we possibly can.
Right. Very well said. And let's, just before we go, I'm sure there's people out there watching who have some interest in the Culture Project. If they wanted to get more information, do you have a web address or somehow they get in touch?
So
you want to give it to us now?
It is restoreculture.com. Restoreculture.com.
Restoreculture.com.
One word, restoreculture.com.
Very good.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
well,
thank
good
you.
luck. We're with you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Christina
care.
Barbara of the Culture Project, and we'll be back in a moment when we interview the president of Catholics for the Common Good, Bill May. Still ahead, I'm here with Jeanette Bankovic at the World Meeting of Families. Stay with us. And thank you so much for staying with us. Jeanette Bankovic here with Doug Keck for the World Meeting of Families, the 8th one coming to you from the Pennsylvania Convention Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We've been here all week long. We'll be here through Friday. And of course, the Pope will be coming to Philadelphia for the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Right now, of course, you've been watching great coverage throughout the day, and we'll continue with Raymond Arroyo and his team as the Pope finishes off in D.C., of course, and then heads to New York, and then ultimately here to Philadelphia. And just before we get to our speaker who's coming up, our keynote address from Helen Alvaré, very popular speaker, coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Jeanette, one of the things I wanted to mention was I had bumped into the Father Joseph. You know, the Marians, whoever's in charge is called Father Joseph. Well, the Father Joseph there now handed me a petition that I thought many of our audience would be very supportive of, which is please grant St. Faustina the title of Doctor of the Church. So I think this would be something that I think a lot of us would, certainly out in EWTN who love the Divine Mercy chaplet, watch it on EWTN support, of course have read St. Faustina's diary and get so much out of it. And certainly going into the Year of Mercy that we have with the Holy Father coming up, it would seem like a perfect time. And I think I agree with them to see if they would grant St. Faustina to be titled Doctor of the Church.
Right, it would be an appropriate moment, wouldn't it? And it would be fantastic and really quite amazing to have her named a Doctor of the Church during that Jubilee Year of Mercy. And if people wanted to be able to register their own signature with this petition, how would they do that, Doug?
Well, it says visit the divinemercy.org/doctor. So go to the website. It's the Divine Mercy, all is one word, .org/doctor, and you can sign an online petition. I have no doubt that Mother Angelica would be and is very supportive of St. Faustina becoming a doctor of the church, one strong woman to another strong. Who knows? Maybe Mother will be a doctor one of these days. You'll never know. But we do have a chance right now to speak to somebody who's got something important to say, and that is the President of Catholics for the Common Good, Bill May. Great to see you, Bill.
It's good to be here at the World Meeting of Families.
Now, you've got a lot of things going on having to do with marriage and other things. What are the new initiatives that you've got working here?
Well, we've been working 8 years, and at this meeting, at this event, we are going to do the official launch of the Marriage Reality Movement, a movement to take back marriage for our children and families.
When you talk about the marriage reality movement, Bill, what do you mean by that? What is the reality of marriage? What are you promoting specifically?
Well, today in our culture, people are hard pressed to explain what marriage is. And it's so important that we're able to particularly explain it to our children in non-religious language that really verifies its truth with them. And we're, through the marriage debate and all that, a lot of families have been losing their children to the culture. That marriage has nothing to do with children and family, but just a romantic institution between two adults. In fact, that's the way it's been redefined in law. Well, people are looking for what to do now. And the Marriage Reality Movement is a coalition of individuals and organizations that are all working together to really, starting with reintroducing marriage to the culture from the very beginning.
Well, I'm wondering when you're talking about that, because the reality of marriage in many cases today is that young people aren't getting married, and that's part of the problem. Or if they go into it, there is this sense as if there's you're going in like for 20 years, you're going in for 10 years, or we'll stay together, not death do us part, but until we stop loving each other or something like that. That seems to be the reality we're dealing with now. How do you resurrect the traditional understanding of marriage in this culture?
Well, first of all, we look at marriage through the eyes of the child. The eyes of the child within us as well. When we look at, as adults, we look at marriage, we think of complementarity and the conjugal act and all those things. When a child looks at marriage, none of that comes into their mind. What they see is a relationship of irreplaceability. Their mom and dad are irreplaceable to each other and irreplaceable to them. It's a unity. And really that's what marriage is. And the way we describe marriage is that marriage unites not only a man and woman with each other, but any children born from the union. Now, from a public policy standpoint, you can start a conversation by asking the question, do we need a civil institution that specifically unites kids with their moms and dads? Yes or no? That civil institution doesn't exist in the United States anymore because marriage has been redefined by the Supreme Court.
You know, when you think about that and you look at it from the perspective of the child, we're so well aware of the fact that you cannot improve on God's design. When God created man, he created them two genders, male and female, and his very first instruction to them was be fruitful and multiply. You know, and so the whole point was that he was entrusting the procreation of children to come into a union, a solid union, as you say, an irreplaceable union. I would say an indissoluble union between one man and one woman.
Yes, you know, if marriage, the way we present marriage, it's a choice of a man and woman to make themselves irreplaceable to each other. And if they do that, if they're irreplaceable, then it's irrevocable, or they wouldn't be irreplaceable to start with. And so really, parents can talk to their kids, even little kids, you know, sharing with them, you know, about the unity that they feel in the family, or even in a case where there isn't that unity, the child has that desire for connection with their moms and dads, and to really reinforce that that doesn't happen by accident. Mom and dad chose to make themselves irreplaceable to receive you, to prepare a place for you. Isn't God's plan beautiful? And really that describes the fullness of what marriage is to even a 4-year-old.
And one of the things I think we've seen over the years is obviously the longitudinal studies have shown that unlike what the kind of pop psychology told us in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, that, well, mom and dad aren't getting along so well, it's better for the kids if they stop arguing and kind of separate. And we found now with those studies and damage, right, Jeanette, you know is probably better than I do from doing Women of Grace and Abundant Life all these years, that the statistics, not what the church says, but statistically, it's not true. What's most important for the kids was for mom and dad to stay together, just like you're saying.
Yeah, and the interesting part of that is that those longitudinal studies show that not only are little children scathed by marriage, but when scathed by divorce, but when the divorce takes place when the children are older, high school age, college age, it is just as devastating, and that wound lasts throughout the lifetime. It's not a wound that goes away. So the fact of the need to be able to not only support this beautiful institution created by God called marriage is not only absolutely essential right now, it's imperative for us to do it. What initiatives are you instituting, Bill, through the marriage reality movement that is taking this message out and beginning to help it permeate the culture of the day?
Well, we have materials for study groups and things of that sort. We have literature that can be distributed in parishes. But really exciting, as part of the launch, we have just gone live today with our brand new marriage reality website at takebackmarriage.org. And people will find a lot of resources and different ways of thinking about this, ideas that will help them communicate what marriage is in their own family. This is an exciting time. We're going to have the official launch tomorrow night with Archbishop Cordileone, and it's just a very, very exciting time for us. And people are so positive. The whole thing about this, we've got to define ourselves in this effort to take back marriage by what we're for, not by what we're against. And we're in solidarity with the rights of children to be born into a family with their mom and dad united in marriage, and the rights of children to be able to discover the truth about love, sexuality, marriage, and family, because that affects the choices that they make in their lives. So these are fundamental human rights that are enumerated in church teaching.
Well, one of the things I'm wondering, we used to hear sometimes in the past, we talk about the indissolubility of marriage and the fact that marriage is there, it can't change. That's our goal. But then people said, years ago, they said, well, back in the old days, people didn't live as long. So maybe they were only married for 20 years. Or it was in a world where there was no way for a woman to make it on her own because financially and things like that. And those things have changed. And hence, we need to view marriage in a different way. What do we say to that?
Well, the way to view marriage is through the eyes of the child. The eyes of the child within us. We all have that desire to know and be connected with our own mom and dad. And we're part of a circle of irreplaceability ourselves because of that. I mean, if we look at it through the eyes of the culture, you'll see it as an adult-centric romantic institution, but in reality, it's all about unity. Pope Benedict used to talk about marriage and the family as an icon of the Trinity. St. John Paul II used to talk about it as looking at it as intergenerational terms, not just mother, father, and children, but grandparents and aunts and uncles and things of that sort. People are all irreplaceable people because of our relationship. And marriage is a foundation of that. And
one of the things I think that you stress through your marriage reality movement that is so important is the fundamental right of the child. We live in a day and time where we're rights-based, and we have privacy rights, we have rights for this, rights for that, rights for this. But when it comes to the rights of the child, that basic human need to know mom and to know dad, that is one right that is never discussed. And I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing that into the public consciousness.
Well, we've got to discern what's a true right and what's a false right. Every human right protects a common good. A mother and a father are a common good, common to every person without exception. And good, meaning promotes human flourishing. So really, the right of the child comes from that. And really, in church teaching, no one has a right to procreate unless they have first made themselves irreplaceable to each other in marriage. The right to procreate is subordinate to the right of the child to be born into a family with their mom and dad united marriage.
One of the problem we're having today, Bill, certainly here in the United States, and globally as well, but certainly here in the United States, is we forget where our rights come from. And it seems like everybody and his brother has a right to do just anything I want to do, I have a right to do in the name of liberty. Or I think that my rights come from the government instead of from the Creator. Isn't that a problem we're dealing with too?
Oh, it is. And if anybody has teenage children, they hear rights language all the time. But really, we have to understand and be able to discern what's a true right and what's a false right. What's a human right? What's a civil right? And that's one of the things that the marriage reality movement is helping people to understand. It's not about learning sound bites and things of that sort. It's being able to discern what's true and what's not, and be able to present things in a way that our children and other people can confirm that this is true. Through their own experience, that experience stamped in their nature in the act of creation by God. Like that desire we have to know and be connected with our mom and dad.
When you use the word true, what comes into my mind is the noun of that, which is a truth. And what is a truth? A truth is something that's everlasting. And it's an everlasting truth and principle that for a child to come into the world, it takes a man and it takes a woman. And so that truth is the undeniable reality in connection to the common good with regard to the child.
Precisely, and from the perspective of the child, every child has a mother and a father. And today we forget that, and it's a misfortune when a child loses a mother or father or both by any means. It's a misfortune, but now in our culture we're celebrating misfortune all the time.
We're creating misfortune.
We're creating it and celebrating it with alternative families. It's accepted, as alternatives to have a family with children deprived of married mothers and fathers, where really the word really is an irregular family.
Right. And Bill, wouldn't you think in those situations, in the kind of the world we live in today, which is overly therapeutic, where the concern is not making anybody feel bad, instead of saying this is an ideal, we all accept that. Of course, there's going to be situations where it's not the perfect situation. No one's condemning people who are in that, but to act like that's not, the lesser of the two, that it would be better if it was like this. You can't even say that because somehow you're blaming the victim, so to speak.
Well, we have to do that without blame and judgment, because what's done is done. Mm-hmm. And anybody who's parenting, we need to support for the sake of the children. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have to recognize and acknowledge the same reality that the child knows. A child might have two fathers, but I can guarantee you at night that child's laying in bed asking, where's mom? And they may not be able to express that desire because they don't want their two dads to feel bad. Sure. But as soon as they go to school and they learn biology, they know they've got a mom and a dad. Where are they? So they know the loss. They know that reality, and really we need to acknowledge it to ourselves and to each other, that children in those situations, they have the same dignity as anybody else, but they've suffered a misfortune. We need to have compassion for them, and certainly they love their two dads, and their two dads love them, but they have suffered a misfortune in some way, and so the response is compassion and love.
But the reality is they don't have two dads. They have a dad. And this is the unfortunate situation that we face today, because there's an intentional creation of these alternative families.
Exactly. People are conceiving children with the intention of depriving them of the fundamental right. Of knowing and being loved by their own mother and father. I'm talking about donor conception, I'm talking about surrogacy, and that is something that we have to end in defending the rights of the child. And this is all tied together.
It's all interconnected. I think about the fact that when we start to live outside of the will of God, we create a mess. We are not the creator, right? We are the creature. And when the creature begins to usurp the role of the creator, we end up with a mess.
And the children are the victims.
Yes.
Right,
And,
exactly.
and there's no constituency organized to defend the rights of the children. To not only be born into a family with their mom and dad united in marriage, but the rights of our own children to discover the truth. They're being inundated by all of these proposals from the culture that sound reasonable. We've got to equip them to see the falsehoods there, and to be able to witness that to their friends without being accused of being a bigot. Those are the kinds of things that the marriage reality movement are helping parents and young people be able to talk about and express.
And that's the difficulty in some ways. We have to be willing to stand up for the truth regardless of how we're going to be accused. Just before we go, give us contact information again. We're almost ready to go to the hall.
Oh, that's great. It's takebackmarriage.org. Takebackmarriage.org.
And that's Bill May. Thank you so much, Bill. Now we're going to take you to the hall, where I think it's Sister Mary Elizabeth Wussenick is going to be introducing Professor Helen Alvaré and her keynote address on the fertility of Christian love. Sounds like what we were just talking about. Stay with us.
It's all tied together.
Good. They clapped for the films.
What was that?
I said they clapped for the films.
Good afternoon. Professor Helen Alvaré is a professor of law at George Mason University in Virginia. Her teaching and scholarship address matters concerning the family and the intersection of law and religion. She speaks at academic gatherings around the world and through print media and television. Professor Alvaré has represented all of the U.S. Catholic bishops and the Holy See before the world press and in appearances before the United States Congress and the United Nations. She is a consultor to the Pontifical Council for the Laity and the founder of Women Speak for Themselves. She is married and has 3 children. Professor Alvaré is a bright light, offering insightful commentary on the intersection of faith and contemporary culture in a way that allows the beauty and the truth of the gospel of life to shine forth. And she does this not only through her words, but even more eloquently through the witness of her life as a wife and a mother.
Good afternoon. It is a delight to be with you, and I am humbled too to be in this position when it is faith that has brought you here, and you showing me already a powerful understanding of and witness to the gift from God that is family life. Please take a moment to appreciate the gift that you already are to others who see you. We're here together today to think about things that are eagerly awaited, that are hoped for, but also, at the same time, are feared: fertility and the future. Pope Francis speaks of this so often. The creative people all over the world who make their living trying to discern what it is that we're dreaming about, what it is we want, and then reflect that back to us. Advertisers, filmmakers, songwriters, they know that it's irresistible for human beings to hear stories of romance leading to marriage and then children, stories of families reuniting after they've broken apart, stories of hearts softened and enlarged by encounters with children or the disabled or the elderly, where love triumphs over troubles and practical difficulties are overcome. Their movies, their songs, their advertisements, they show us possibilities for our own lives, our lives as we want them to be, as we hope and pray they will be, lives where room is always made for the other, where we don't count the cost, where fears about the future are completely overcome, hearts are melted, and cruelty is transformed and forgiven. In these depictions, in songs, in films, in advertisements, families accept one another and other families, young and old, rich and poor, sick and well. And then the movie or the song or the ad comes to its climactic ending, and there's joy and peace and love. Ladies and gentlemen, adults and children, these purveyors of dreams are not wrong. They have understood our deepest desires, even as they produce a lot of other awful material that gets human beings completely wrong. But our God dearly wants us to generously accept one another in our families and then beyond. Remember, this is the God who, in the person of Jesus Christ, summarized his mission as having come that we might have life and have it abundantly. The title of today's presentation has the word fertility in it. Of course, I'll be speaking about children, but I'll also be speaking about the entire path of Christian life and its essential structure and relationship. We are built for relationship. To be open to the other person, to give to the other person, as Pope Benedict famously put it in his encyclical Deus Caritas Est, to give to the other person that look of love which they crave. And as Pope Francis so often exhorts us, to live our lives as sources of mercy. We are made to open ourselves to God first, and then every single other neighbor who, like the injured traveler in the Good Samaritan story, we happen to find strewn across our particular path as we live our life in the world. As the author of the book called Loneliness reminds us, interestingly, one of those authors was the co-founder of a very widely used dating site, right? He writes a book called Loneliness. He says, there's a really good reason why solitary confinement is universally considered the punishment nearest to death itself, because we are simply built to be with one another. Of course, we long to love and be loved, to know others and be known deeply, to care for others and to give care. That's kind of a secret, that we want to be needed, right? Everybody thinks nobody wants to take care of anyone else, and then everyone else is in their corner saying how badly they wish they were needed. Despite these primal, these deep, these God-given facts about our human selves today, in a new and really pernicious way, we're regularly encouraged, or worse, to close ourselves off to fertility, to the needy other, and even live that way as our life in general. Ironically, this is especially urged where family is concerned. We're told not to marry, until we've lived our life, not to be overrun with the needs of children or elderly or disabled family members. How ironic. The family, the exact group of other human beings in the world that God chooses for us to provide for each and every one of us, each of every one of the individual human beings in human history, an exactly tailored education in how to love God and one another. Which one of us has not said to the child or family member who feels unlike the others, but don't you understand? God gave you to me. It was that particular. It was that exact. With his very hand, he placed you in my care and in my love and me for you, because it is that specific. But our God has not left us alone, not even for a second, even in the disputed arena of the family. He is there in the restlessness we feel when we've settled for less than the abundant life in the family. He's there in the consolation we receive when we order our priorities rightly and we put people before things. He's there in the facts on the ground, in human experience, in science, which confirms over and over and over again that the way of happiness, ironically, the way of freedom, is the way of interdependent love, and that the starting block on the way of love is the family. I want to reflect on this theme of the family and fertility today by first looking at the evidence about God's plan for human beings to welcome one another, with special attention to the gift of children. Then I want to look at families as we actually experience it. I've been listening to a number of terrific talks here at this meeting, and people are very real about how family life is actually experienced. And we're not going to convert ourselves or touch the other unless we understand it as it's really lived. Then I want to consider the genuinely profound, utterly basic disputes and overwhelming challenges sometimes to the Christian norm of welcoming first the child, then the family, then the extended family, and then all others, before offering a few concluding words. First, turning to the signs that we have about God's plan for human beings to welcome one another, with special attention to children. The first thing that has to strike us, really between the eyes, if you even think about it for 5 seconds, is that God, in God's self, is not alone. He is three persons in a constant, never-ending relationship of love. We human beings, made in God's image, are also made for relationship and also built to give and receive love. We are male and female, who together bring this third life into being. When people say that human beings are in God's image, often they are referring primarily to our capacity for free will and rationality. But the thing that is most often left out in the statement, we are in God's image, is that like God, we are in relation, even as ourself, as the one alone in a room, we are still in relation. This strikes us with particular force when we consider that God could have done otherwise. He could have made every member of the human race one sex. No problem, he could have done that. He could have fashioned each one of us from scratch, with no cooperation required at all from a set of parents. He could have done that. He could have decided that we would be built where other things on earth are built. Workshops, construction sites, negotiating tables, laboratories. He could have done it anyway, bringing new human life into being. But he did none of these. None of these, God determined, was sufficient to the nature or the greatness or the dignity or the image of God of the human person. So instead, God put the gift of making and caring for new life in the hands of the man and the woman, beginning with what Genesis so gorgeously calls the one flesh union, a union signifying in the body what is also meant to be true in the manner of their entire life. Two united, cooperating to care for others, who is in every way this first other, this child, a part of each of them and a natural link to the future. God could also have fashioned things so that only brief cooperation between the man and the woman was needed to nurture life. And as anyone who has been a parent for 5 minutes, in that first moment when you realize the years unrolling before you knows, he didn't fashion nurturing human beings as a matter of quick cooperation. He designed it so that children would need their parents' concerted cooperation for a very long time, and would feel the loss keenly at any age if the family broke apart or any one of them were lost. Consider, by contrast, how other living beings are created, without the presence of love at their beginning, or replicated by one parent progenitor, or often abandoned shortly after birth, but not human beings. As to us, God chose specifically differently, and it means something. God also fitted us with ingenious biological, neurological, and other mechanisms which attract us toward family building, family loyalty, and care for kin. There's the mysterious and amazing and continually unfolding function of human hormones, bringing men and women together, playing a role in bonding them, moving parents to care for their offspring, and rewarding and consoling parents when they do. There is the incredibly imaginative genetic link. I mean, we take it for granted, but it had to be invented by someone. This notion, right, that parent would be connected to child and grandchild and cousin and so forth. This link is part of this unseen, we don't even think about, this natural home, this nest, in which the child finds his or her unique identity, gains stability, and feels family pride. Just the conversation one has about whose curly hair the child inherited, or why she or he can roll their tongue, or the shape of their ears and how their grandfather suffered through the same set of overlarge ears. These parts of conversation are a sign of God's wit, right? This genetic link that enables a child to be linked to mother and father and grandmother and grandfather and aunt and uncle. I'm part of a family here in Philadelphia. I have over 100 family members here in Philadelphia, and we have a certain look about us, so that sometimes people will see someone who is my cousin in a train and greet them as me. I love that, right? It's the family. And this unique and creative thing of the genetic link is God's witty way, among others, of binding us. That the family is of God, an aspect of his divine plan, is also surely indicated by Jesus' own life on earth, which you've heard so many times. His coming to us through the pregnancy and birth of a human mother. His being reared in a family home with a human mother and father. Jesus often referring to our status as children of a loving Father. And his forceful affirmation of the divine intention for the permanent, faithful, fruitful union of the man and the woman. Consider this powerful witness of our nature and of God's intentions when we reflect in a few minutes upon the loud claims that there is nothing at all special, nothing of any great moment, nothing unique about the man and the woman coming together to bring new life in the world, nothing we cannot replace with technology or sheer will or human law. The Humanum film that you saw just before I entered here is part of a larger project to address this basic lack of attention to these fundamental realities of human ecology. Pope Francis opened up a marvelous conference last fall, the Humanum Conference. We have the book collecting the talks here today in this hall and I think also in the exhibit hall, where the church, along with so many other religions across the planet, explored the natural and supernatural reality of the absolutely obvious uniqueness and moment of the fact that there is man and woman, not one sex, and that it is man and woman together who bring the child into the world. At the moment, however, I want to turn my attention to the second point about the family as we actually experience it in our day-to-day lives, in light of this call to welcome new life in one another. Let's be frank. When you live elbow to elbow with each other, with other people, in your house, day and night, through good times and bad, there are endless, or as I like to say, relentless opportunities to learn to love, and also to respect and admire one another. But side by side with these, at the very same moment, are opportunities to get impatient, to become angry or disgusted. Pope Francis refers to this as, the moment where the plates start flying, right? In this sense, one might say that nothing prepares you for the world quite like living this close with your closest relatives. Famous Catholic writer and philosopher G.K. Chesterton wrote in one of his Father Brown mystery novels, "You matter, I matter. It is the hardest thing in theology to believe." And it is hard, yes. Let's start by thinking about other people's children, okay? Now envision them crying near to you in a plane or a bus or throwing a tantrum in a supermarket. And don't even get us started on the subject of rude neighbors and coworkers. How can we ever come to that Pope Benedict point of giving this every other person the look of love they crave? The answer is pretty simple. It's unlikely that we'll ever start down that road unless we've gained some Good Samaritan practice at home, unless we have listened many times to the same story told by our grandmother, or helped our disabled sister cope with a bully at school, or given money we don't really have to an in-law in need. Unselfishness is a habit. Even sacrificial love is a habit. I remember hearing this for the first time when I was in law school, and I had a roommate break up with her fiancé. They are happily now remarried for over 30 years, but she was so grieved, and I was trying to start down this road of giving things away that were very dear to me. And so I took my favorite gold pin that my mother had given me on my 13th birthday that she had admired, and I hung it on her doorknob. And I turned around to walk away, and then I reached back to grab it because I couldn't, and then she opened the door. and so I was able to engage in sacrificial love despite myself. It's just a habit. My heart was not there, but it comes there after you practice this for a while. If we don't begin the habits of sacrificial love in the family, good luck finding the wherewithal to practice it someday for someone who is unknown to you. In the words of the immortal American comic character Snoopy, I love humanity. It's people I hate. You remember those. Family love gets us to a wider circle. You start with the people who take too long in your one bathroom and who need you to drop off the car for repairs just as the thunderstorm gets started. But you end with strangers in need whose only link with you is their common humanity. This process actually, as I've observed it, and now I'm getting older, so I have a little arc of history to look at, it can proceed pretty organically. I'll never forget the day my husband and I brought our first baby home from the hospital. She's an adult woman here with me today. There she was, limp and beautiful as a pile of rosebuds. That was my first thinking. I had never felt skin like that except when rosebuds started to get softer. She was sleeping in the back seat of the car, in the baby seat. We stopped by a relative's house who leaned in the window and put her hand in to touch her. And someplace deep inside of me came this primal thing, don't touch her. And I thought, oh, that's really weird. I wonder where that came from. But it turns out that's not actually weird at all. That's where it begins. This is a person completely entrusted to you, and no matter whose hand is coming through the window, your first reaction is go away. Then your children grow up, and they struggle to adjust to being responsible for themselves with more and more obligations in the world, and more subject to worldly temptations. And you begin to sympathize a great deal, particularly when they turn teenagers, especially if you are even basically honest about your own teenage years and what was going through this head of yours. If you're in my shoes and you teach a lot of students who are freshly emerged adults, so I'm teaching students in their early 20s, you begin to sympathize with the fact that the world is really asking them to leap tall buildings by 22, 23. They ask you to get into college. What is your passion? What research projects in foreign countries to improve the lives of others do you intend to take up at age 20? Where's your resume? Have you accomplished your dreams yet? You just really sympathize with them. Occasionally, they begin to seem like your own children, and you slip now and again into calling one of your own students, or even a stranger, sweetie or honey, when they come to you with the question. And in case you're wondering, this is a mistake, especially if they're 6'5" and they've just met you. Eventually, if you have asked God day in and day out to work his will with you, you begin to see every child as if they could be your child. It's like a magical transformation. You won't be able to look at the homeless, the sick, the depressed, the fatherless, without remembering how they are someone's child or sibling or mother, and then converting that co-suffering, converting your maternal and paternal selves into action. This organic and divine growth in love and understanding can work in other ways too. As a child, you come to understand how human beings are first receivers of love and then givers. You figure out as a child that you first have to gain some self-possession as a gift from someone before you're capable of practicing self-donation. And you have to see that you can't push your young child too far in that. It's a push and pull. They have to understand that you are empowering them, enabling them first, and then they feel free to give. You also come to understand the struggles of all mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, grandmothers and grandfathers, simply because the family is a global, interreligious, trans-historical feature of human life in every culture and religion. I have seen the universal quality of the family inspire kinship in a global way. On 2 occasions, I have participated in interfaith dialogue with Muslim women. At the first one, we spoke quite formally. I was the Catholic law professor, and they were the Muslim philosopher or Muslim lawyer. The philosopher and I eventually realized that we had daughters who were exactly the same age. Our conversation very soon turned to shared experiences of motherhood. Before the week was done, we were exchanging gifts for one another's daughters, while also finding formal, positive proposals as the family that we could share as professional colleagues. The other occasion was one of my favorite laughs. I was in a dialogue with a group of women lawyers from Arab countries. At one point, one of the women's cell phone rings, and it's her husband calling from Saudi Arabia. And every woman here will know exactly why he was calling. He couldn't find the children's school uniforms. Am I right? Okay. And she said, which every woman says, they're exactly where they've been every day for the last 8 years, right? And he did not react to that too well. My husband doesn't like that. And she gets off the phone and she bursts out laughing and she says, my husband is in Saudi Arabia, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and he wants to know where the uniforms are. Every woman at the table had a good laugh. And on that universally shared experience, we built a much better personal, but also legal dialogue, because we knew who each other was as a human being, as a member of the family. We were instantly humanized to one another. We knew what we had in common in our shared humanity. You can observe this in the same way an older father can counsel a younger father, even if they're strangers. A grandmother can counsel her daughter. A daughter caring for her elderly mother meets another woman who's starting to care for her elderly mother and can pass on the wisdom. All have come to know what no book can teach, how you really do find yourself in losing yourself in the love of other people, beginning with family and then moving out into the world. Finally, before offering some concluding remarks, I want to consider today the genuinely profound and sometimes overwhelming current challenges to the Christian norm of welcoming the child, the family, and then the nearest neighbor. Just in case you are tempted to think that even for one moment I am suggesting that family life is all hearts and flowers, I want to assure you that I am not. In my family, I'm known for several things, of course, but one of them is for my saying to my recently deceased and very accomplished mother, my mother who was so gifted at the piano, who graduated first in her class in a local Philadelphia Catholic college. I said to her when I was like 10 years old, which was when feminism was really coming in the late 20th century, wow, you could have been something. Yeah. I said, why are you taking care of us when you could have been something? There were 5 of us. Her mother, my grandmother, Helen, also lived with us her whole life and was taken care of in our home until she died. Yes, I was a child of the 70s and totally an early convert to the gospel of me. I remember being absolutely horrified when it struck me during my late teens that the time was coming in my life when the world thought that I could beginning to think about being married and having kids. Oh my gosh, I thought, is this life? Is this all there is? Why was I spending all this time getting an education if I was going to turn it around and fork it over to children? Where was the decade of fun I had coming to me? It was only an adult reconversion to the beauty of the way of Jesus Christ. I was totally reconverted by that famous, line in the scriptures, Lord, where would we go? I mean, what else really could compare? I was really able to look around in my 20s at the other isms and make, I hope, I thought a very rational and also faith-filled evaluation at that time. So I was converted to that, but I was also converted to the despair of living for myself. It was awful. To the joy of loving other people. I was also converted by the witness of my family's love for my disabled sister, of my parents' love for one another, of their taking care of their elderly relatives until their death, of my older sister's marriages, my older brother, the way they cared for their children, of the mentor couples in my parish who were so marvelous, the grandparents who loved seeing me come to the parish with the young kids and spoke to me about my children. All of that awakened me in my 20s. On that subject of the gospel of me, however, things have only intensified as a general matter over the last couple decades. We might capture these trends, and you've seen the figures in the newspapers, by observing that fewer people are marrying at all in many countries, in really every region of the world, with very few exceptions. Many and many are living together instead, making absolutely no promises to one another about the future or about children. In the vast majority of countries, people are having fewer, even tiny numbers of children. Demographers call it lowest low fertility, and more countries are falling into it. And dramatically higher numbers of children are unlikely to live with both their parents. You've undoubtedly heard about this on and on. What is taking the place of spouses and children in our lives? Many are simply responding to the world's very intense and incessant demands to be mobile, unencumbered, fast-moving, and competitive in order to keep up with the pace of a globally integrated workforce and economies, which basically translated means work out of your living room 24/7 with a mobile device and no coworkers. I mean, that's sort of what we're responding to more and more. Many see the allure of the production of new created things, but not the beauty of the procreation of children. People fear interdependency, responsibility for a new soul in a world that is economically fearsome to them. Globally integrated, and in the sense that when one domino falls, so do many others. For many, life is very tough economically. And public and private leadership do not set policies according to how the family ought to be treated, how to nurture the family. Policies on pay, policies on job security, on work schedules are set according to efficiency, according to individual accomplishment, not according to what is good for the family. Finally, many people are simply choosing more material things and more time to savor them, in lieu of spending money and time on the rearing of children. For women, there's an additional dynamic at work, the persistent, strident set of voices telling women that they have for far too long lost out on all the good stuff of life by devoting themselves disproportionately to children or to disabled or elderly relatives. In the name of equality, in the name of freedom, in the name of justice, these voices recast fertility as a disability, and the government is more and more and more on the side of this proposal. Some of the more prominent, even glamorous international movements asserting women's interest have put this message at the very top of their agenda. It's painful to see. Women's own self-described needs and desires are ignored. Of course women want to and can contribute to the community. Of course women want to and can and do contribute to intellectual, academic, media, entertainment, political life. But they want to do it in a way that allows them to put people first, particularly the people given to them. But today, public and private leaders Thank you. Public and private leaders today are left very free to overlook, ignore, and refuse to accommodate women's own interests and desires about marriage and family life, and to instead embrace contraception and abortion as the sine qua non of women's equality. They just put them on an exactly even plane. Thank you. The prominent modern tendency to equate women's freedom with freedom from children has tragic outcomes. Non-Catholics and Catholics alike can observe them. You do not have to believe in the Catholic Church's teaching about fertility and marriage and family in order to observe what I'm telling you, and it's more widely observed today than ever. There are not only physical and practical consequences of contraception and abortion, the destruction of human life, the harmful health effects on women. It's hard to go by a month in the United States without some magazine or major newspaper printing an expose on the effects of some particular form of contraception on a woman's body. But there are also larger effects on the relationships between men and women, and parents and children. In a culture where sex is artificially cut off from new life, and I'm not talking about every act, I'm talking about where even the idea that sex happens to be the place where all human life and human society is put is simply set aside. In a culture where sex is just another thing to do, it's like a tennis game, okay? The casualties are legion. Sex becomes the price of even a brief relationship with a member of the opposite sex. Nothing special at all. Sadness and even depression, especially among women, grow when seemingly intimate bonds, it seems intimate, but then they find out the next day they're nothing at all. There's no bond there, or at the very least, it was highly temporary. The desire for marriage is weakened, or marriage is timed and planned more with respect to material standards of living. God's gift to women, his entrusting them in a very particular way with pregnancy, with childbirth, is greeted with a yawn, or worse, anger and resentment. Childbearing is foregone. More and more children are born without even the possibility of their parents' stable love and care. Eventually, it's even argued that there can be such a thing as marriage that is explicitly divorced from the notion of children. Because after all, they said, already marriage between opposite-sex couples is explicitly divorced from children in culture. Why should there not be same-sex marriage, is the argument. Children are an extrinsic matter, a second question at best, so far removed from the first question. So, in conclusion, our Catholic faith about the family, about new life, about the meaning of love for the other, is not on its face or as lived some obscure, narrow, separate body of doctrine hidden away in some corner, impossible to decipher or determine. It lives vibrantly in your families, in your church communities. It is present on the faces of the children, of the disabled and elderly and extended family you care for. It is supported daily. I wish you could see the research that comes across my desk in the leading social science or psychological or anthropological or neurobiological journals on a weekly basis. This research, emerging from every corner of the world and in so many disciplines, chronicles the association between a welcoming, stable family life and the possibility in society for more happiness, freedom, peace, and even economic security, and human rights for women and children. The opposite view, beginning with denying that there's even a natural link between love and life, thus denying children's rights to be known and to know their mother and father, and denying ultimately that life is for giving away, it's not working out. It's just not. We know that now because we've experimented with it. We really have. We've had a decades and decades long experiment with this. And we can count the cost to a man and to a woman, and especially to the children. And in particular, today, we can count it more and more to the elderly, and in particular to the poor, who in the United States and elsewhere suffer more from a retreat from marriage and family than any other group. They are denied so many other things, and now even this. As Catholics, alongside those of other faiths who understand the place of the family in God's plan and the place of welcoming new life in the family, it's frankly up to us to bring to life what we know about accepting other people into our lives. And this begins with, for most people, accepting children. Not all, but it is the lesson for most. It is up to us to help others overcome their not insubstantial fears of fertility, their fears of the future. It is up to us to show them, as well as to speak with them, about the joys of family life, to adopt an attitude of abundance, a loaves and fishes mentality, and a way of life that is in integrity with that, to let our very person speak about the transformation of every person possible when they learn via the family that giving is receiving, to develop practical habits of living as the man or woman for others, because most people are not going to consult the latest research. That's what I do all day. I don't think it's what most people do all day. Most people are not consuming Catholic literature on the family, but they will look and they will see, in our faces and in our lives, or not, the message of Jesus Christ to be fruitful in our families and with every neighbor that God has strewn across each of our paths, one different from the other. I want to thank you very much.
Professor Helen Alvaré, with a wonderful, wonderful, powerful, inspiring talk entitled Creating the Future, the Fertility of Christian Love. Doug Keck here, joined on set by Jonette Bankovic here at the World Meeting of Families, coming to you from the Philadelphia Convention Center in the heart of Philadelphia. And a couple of things that I wanted to mention that I picked up listening while we were sitting here listening to Helen Alvaré's talk. She talked about a couple of things that struck me. One was find yourself by losing yourself. We hear that a lot. That a lot of people today, and we've talked about this on and off, fear responsibility.
Yes.
That's a big thing. And this was the other one that struck me, recasting fertility as a disability.
Yes.
That to me was the phrase I think that struck me the most, that really hit on. And she was talking at that time about kind of the NGO approach, the governmental approach to especially some of the third world.
Yes.
Where rather than responding, as she said, listening to women say what they need, they go ahead and give them a contraception, basically.
Well, you know, for a number of years, we have talked on our Women of Grace program about the fact that a woman's healthy capacity to bear children is seen as a problem. It's treated as a disease almost in many gynecologist offices today. So rather than celebrating the fact that a woman has this great gift and can conceive children, it's looked at as something that needs to be fixed or altered or mutilated so that she no longer can achieve this beautiful capacity of the female person. I was also very struck by her poignant description of the home being the place where virtue is learned. That has been a recurring theme, I think, throughout our opportunities to interview people today, that the home is the basic cell of society, but in addition to that, it is the basic cell for the learning of love, for the learning of what it means to go out of yourself for another.
It was interesting, too. One of the things she was pointing out was just the genius, in a sense, of your own life and appreciating what you have. And we say that, but to step back and think about the Creator who has laid out who you are, your chromosomes, the thing. And she was talking about the fact that you're part of a family, your own family, the extended family, and that you sound alike, you look alike. There are aspects of you. She was saying in the greater Philadelphia area, she has a large family, and her cousin might get mistaken for her on a subway ride, etc., because they look similar. And we think about that great genius and how much more connected we are because of that, right?
Yes. And don't we long for that? I mean, it's part of the human dimension to long for connection. And this is why it is such, I think, a travesty to deprive children of this reality of who they are and where they come from. Again, as we've heard from some of our other guests, there is that sadness of heart that should logically come when a child's deprived of this through means outside of his own capacity. But that doesn't mean that we try to normalize that and make it a standard for the way in which things should be.
Right. It's interesting, too, because we've heard several talks being given. Obviously, we're right outside in the main hallway. That's the third keynote so far that we've heard. And I have to say, that is probably the largest level of applause that I have heard, and a certain amount of a standing ovation that we saw there. And we all know here in the United States what a great speaker she is, how she really, for many, many years, was the face of the USCCB and of the Catholic Church in fighting the pro-life issues in Washington and being a wonderful spokesperson. I remember her testifying, obviously, in the partial birth abortion situation a number of years back, and she's really an elegant speaker and a great representative, not only of the church, but of motherhood and the family.
Yes, she is. And that dimension comes across loud and strong. She made a statement about the fact, people don't do the research that she does every day. And so she brings a depth and a breadth of knowledge and the capacity to back up the beautiful teaching of the church with statistics that prove that this is the way in which we should go. She does us, I think, a beautiful, beautiful service in the presentations that she makes, but also the study and the corpus of work that she's given to this area.
The other thing she mentioned, and I could relate to this growing up in the 60s and 70s, was her thinking, saying to her mom, who was a very accomplished woman who graduated first in her college's class, saying, gee, you could have been somebody. In a sense, why'd you waste your time on us? And that is so indicative of, unfortunately, the way society has really downgraded the role of motherhood and taking care of children, so much so that, and we hear this all the time, somebody will say to a woman, well, what do you do? Well, I'm taking care, I'm a house, or I'm taking care of my children, I'm a caretaker. Oh, well, but do you have a job?
Yes. Well, that emphasis, I think, speaks to the whole way in which we look at the coming together of man and woman today. She talked about and lamented the fact that so many relationships today don't even include marriage. It's not something that's even looked at. The coming together of a man and woman in a casual experience it's almost a disposable kind of mentality. And this, of course, happens randomly, but I think that when there's that intentionality to stay together, to work through it, what a great contribution it makes. She laments the fact now that she looked at her mother in that way. We all need to do an adjustment of the vision that we have.
And I think, and obviously this is just an opinion, but certainly the complementarity, the idea that men and women are different, so that when they are in intimate situations, they come at it many times from a difference, and they take it away in a different way. It has a different impact on each other. I think it's fair to say in most cases, psychologically, even physically, there's a different situation for the way a man many times will view those kind of casual encounters versus what the woman or the girl thinks she's putting into it or getting out of it.
Yeah, well, there's no question about that. I mean, just based on the way in which God's developed the man, his mentality leads him to go out and conquer, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but his standpoint is more utilitarian. Whereas a woman, God's made her, and her body testifies to the fact that she is made for the human person, and so she encompasses, all of that reality of somebody that she is intimate with. And the hookup culture that we're in, oftentimes what we see are so many young women who are in and out of these relationships and the devastation that takes place. Helen spoke about the rise of depression in women today. Woman definitely comes at relationships differently.
Well, as you said, utilitarianism, that's what we see today. I think that's even what the Holy Father and the Church has been trying to say. This idea that your value comes not because intrinsically from God, but because of what you can produce or contribute to whatever. And with that being said, we're here at the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia. I'm here with Jeanette Benkovic. We've got much more ahead. We've got an interview with Maria Richardson, who's the director of the World Meeting of Families for the Youth Congress. That's coming up in just a minute or two. Stay with us, much more ahead here from Philadelphia. And thank you so much for staying with us here at the 8th World Meeting of Families, coming to you from the Pennsylvania Convention Center in the heart of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And we have to do our own Take Two because we have some other guests we're going to talk to first. The radio hosts of Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, the one and only Jerry Usher, Mr. Catholic Radio, and Debbie Giorgiani. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And we're here with Jeanette, of course. And you guys have been doing radio for a long time, both of you, but together, how long's it been? Since June or so now?
June 15th, we started Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. I can't believe it's been almost 3.5 months.
3.5 months, and a lot of listeners, a lot of feedback, and it's been exciting. We've really enjoyed it.
How do you feel like what you're doing? Obviously, we're broadcasting various radio programs. Teresa Tomio's shows here, other shows are here. You're doing your show here. But how are you taking what you normally do and make that fit in World Meeting of Families, or does that naturally fit on a regular basis?
Well, we're doing all this week, we're doing Family Week. So Monday we did, what was Monday?
What is a family?
Oh yeah, amazingly enough, we did What is a Family? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had to ask that question. So we started real foundational, and yesterday we did
Large families.
Yeah, the blessings of large families. Today it was adoption and foster care. Tomorrow we're doing the family under attack, which it certainly is. And then Friday we're just going to ask people to call in and share their joyful stories of family.
I think one of the unique aspects about what you do with Take Two is you draw people to take a second look, to look at an issue a little differently than they're getting in the secular world, or even in a way that's different from the culture and the way in which that's been approached to them through their own personal experiences.
We've had a lot of comments here at World Meeting of Families. Wonderful, just so gracious comments. And but what they shared with us is that they feel like they're in our living room talking to us, and it's just they're kind of like part of the conversation or eavesdropping on the conversation, and that makes us feel great because we wanted this to be a peer ministry. We wanted it to be peer driven to the sense where people would feel totally comfortable calling in, and they do. And I love that. I really feel we've met that mission.
I think so.
Right. Well, it's very conversational, and I know when we talked about the program and you came to us and we were working a number of months back about putting the show together and getting it on. The other part of the Take Two that always struck me was, in a sense, all of us have a Take Two because our Lord has given us a second chance, and that's also what we've got. And so we all have to realize that we're listening today that we always get a second chance. We already have one, and that the Lord, going into the Jubilee Year of Mercy, obviously coming up, that whole idea of we can always begin again, and no matter what's happening in our lives, there's other people who have it as worse, if not worse, than you do. And that, like you said, Debbie, that peer-to-peer ministry, the idea of getting help from other people who are struggling with the same thing you might be struggling. And again, that connectiveness that we as Catholics have, which we see at a global event like this, the Meeting of Families, certainly the Holy Father coming to the United States, coming from Cuba, and certainly what EWTN strives to do on TV and on radio on a regular basis, which is to tell Catholics who may be isolated in their own home or driving in their own car to realize they're not alone, right?
I feel honored to be in your presence, Doug, if you're only on your second chance. Because I feel like I'm on about my 100th chance with God. But you're right, though. With the Year of Mercy coming up, I know the network is going to be so focused on this. And Debbie and I just have a lot of just real passion, a lot of things welling up within us for the Year of Mercy. I just think it's brilliant. I think the world is just crying out for mercy right now. And people who don't even know it, I think the grace that's going to come through this special year, the world's going to be changed by this. Pope Francis has done a great favor to the whole world, I think.
Radio is such an intimate type of communications, isn't it? And I think that that's what opens a person's heart, to be able to share with you from the depths of their own being. And so to be able to bring some of the difficulties that they're struggling with, or some of the mistakes that they fear they've made or may be making even when they're placing that phone call, can be perfectly addressed through the intimacy of that medium. It's one of the things I like most about radio.
Yeah, and you do that so well, because I listen to you all the time, and you really do. You relate to everyone they call in, and you give them a sense of comfort and peace. And I think we try to do that as well. And you know what's really nice too, and I get Holy Spirit goosebumps all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, when you're talking to somebody, because you can't see them. They're sharing their deepest feelings with you, and they're just opening up about their life in a nutshell.
Yes.
And you grow very close to that person in the human core sense so fast that you almost don't want to let them go.
That's part of the gift of our femininity, don't you think so?
Absolutely. Amen.
I mean, it's the spiritual motherhood component, which is why it's so beautiful that the two of you work together, because you bring that complementarity. You know, you bring that fullness of what it means to be able to relate to a human person by virtue of your distinct genders.
Well, one of the things definitely they complementarity is that Debbie can remember what shows they do in a regular week to remind Jerry.
Okay.
And even though they're not husband and wife, they're mirroring it in many, many ways.
Well, at the meet and greet, we constantly are getting, are you two a couple? We say, no, we're like...
We had a caller ask.
Yeah, we did.
Well, the caller said, are you married? And I said, Debbie is.
We're radio spouses,
I'm
right?
a radio husband.
Yeah. But it's really, you know, then the reason, to Jerry's defense, I will tell you, the reason why it's been kind of overwhelming is we're broadcasting at the beautiful EWTN setup in the center of the exhibit hall, and there's a lot of distractions. I mean, there is probably, hundreds of priests walking by, and sisters, and brothers, and deacons, and there's a lot happening. It's a very exciting time. I gotta tell you, it's hard for me to even broadcast, because I'm distracted by wanting to wave to every priest that walks by. So, to his defense, was that good?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that was good.
You covered well for him. Very good.
No, it's a beautiful opportunity, though, because now you get to see some of the faces of the people that you're really ministering to through the radio, you know, and that connection is always a great thing, I think.
Well, what's great about that, too, is I think about you've got the people here, too. They're in many ways, leaders themselves. They're people, whether they're working for Catholic apostolates, these are the people who their faith means a lot to them. And I think what we're offering many times is additional support for them in what they're doing, because they're out in the front lines there in their ministries around the world, and we give them additional support. The other thing that struck me in listening to what you were talking about with relating to that person who has the ability to share with you is the great thing about Catholic radios, it's anonymous on both ways. That I can be in my car and no one knows what I'm listening to. They could think I'm listening to Howard Stern or I'm listening to ESPN. Instead, I'm listening to Jerry and Debbie. And I don't have to step out. I can get back to my faith. I can learn more about my faith in a non-confrontational way, in a way that I don't have to have somebody come and say, what are you listening to that stuff for? You know what I mean? Because I think there's a lot of people out there who believe a lot more than they're willing to say in public. They know what's right. They know in their heart. And I've always believed in a lot of ways, once you're a Catholic, you're always a Catholic. There's something in there that is always being tapped, and if you're open to it, and I think that's where Catholic radio really provides an opportunity, and EWTN does on TV as well, that in your own home and your privacy, you can be replenished.
You know, a lot of times people think that Catholic radio and TV is for the choir, you know, that you're just kind of preaching to the choir, but our show, so many shows, I think of Catholic Answers Live, they have call-in shows for pro-abortion people. The lines are jammed. They have call-in shows for atheists. We get on our show, people will call up and they want to say, hey, we don't really agree. Yeah, people are listening. You know, there's something going on. There's something drawing them. We always say, you know what? They're listening. They may call in, they may challenge, they may disagree, but they're listening. And that's the grace of God at work.
Well, I know that there are statistics that tell us that for every call you receive, that is the equivalent to how many people are listening. I don't exactly know what that equation is, But the fact of the matter is, if somebody's calling in with a question and you're answering that question, you know that there is a boatload of people out there that have the same question, and you're answering a need that they have in their own heart. And then when you hear those testimonies come back, and I know you hear them all the time, of people who say, oh, I needed to hear that, you know, that was exactly what I needed right at that exact moment. It shows you that the work is great, and God is using every means He can to reach the hearts and the minds of His people.
Absolutely, absolutely. God is constantly reaching towards us and constantly using whatever vessel He can possibly reach to reach people. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I know myself, I've been on the receiving end where I've turned on Catholic radio, and all of a sudden it's speaking to me, and I'm thinking, is anybody else listening? Because this is all for me, you know?
The Lord orchestrated this
exactly,
and He did.
Exactly. That's how much He loves us.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share one thing, because we've talked about it a lot every single show that we do, is that we kind of feel like each person that calls in just wants to know that they're okay.
Right.
You know, they want to know that they're doing the best they can in this world, this crazy world, and they're just going to be okay. And I think they can hear that from us, because both Jerry and I come from the heart. We both lead from the heart. Although he's a little more logical than I am. I'm a little more emotional, as you can tell with the hands moving. But I think that people just want to know they're going to make it, you know?
So tell me, do the hands move when you're behind the mic and nobody can see you?
Absolutely. I'm 100% Italian, and the hands just fly.
And also, just not, they could be okay, but they're not alone.
That's exactly
That somebody else is listening, and that they realize that, you know what, and you can say, you're not the only person. There's plenty of other people struggling with the same thing that you're struggling with, and we can help each other. And one way or the other, God still loves you, and just stay true. And I think the other thing you were saying, Jerry, earlier about people listening, the truth attracts. Even people calling up to debate, they hear it, they feel challenged. I think in many cases, many people want to be convinced. They say, well, I don't really agree with you, but maybe you can convince me, because you know what, I'd like to believe what you believe.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people are arguing to try and sort of hold on to their position in defiance of this or that teaching or whatever, but really the one that they're working through the convincing of is themselves. I think you're right.
So you provide a sounding board and also sort of like an echo chamber, you know?
Oh, yeah. That's well said.
And so many times, not just our show, but so many shows, people will call in and say, hey, the caller you had, you know, if you call it, and they'll add something to it, or say, you know, I just want to point out a resource, or, you know, give them encouragement. You know, it just really is. It's a peer-to-peer ministry, not just our show, but all of EWTN Radio and TV.
Right. And that's what all EWTN Radio and TV and Catholic Radio is all about, is promoting other Catholic ministries, whether the ones that we see here at this giant hall from around the world and all this great apostolic work, but also all the local radio stations that are basically started by regular people in the parish who say, you know, I heard Catholic Answers, or I heard Jerry Usher, we got to have that. How come we don't have that here? And they find out through EWTN and Dave Vansray's and our whole team, which will help people get radio stations started, etc., that there's a way to do it. It's not that difficult, and you do deserve it.
You know, and I have to thank you, Jerry, because, you know, you're a veteran. You're a pioneer in Catholic radio. You go back almost to the inception of this great growth that's taken place. And I know that you go out and you do a lot of the radiothons for these stations. You help to raise funds so that these stations can stay on the air. And I want to thank you for that. I mean, it's a generosity of heart that accompanies you there. That sense, that's heard. I've had the opportunity to be called in for those moments, and I've been with you on the air once or twice. But you have a great spiritual paternity for these stations, and I admire that.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Right, and we're happy you're taking care of yourself a little bit, because sometimes you were your health was a little bit suffering worth the wear. So we always have to remember that too. Thank you so much.
I have a good health coach now.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. I'm always going to tell you.
Well, it was take one with you guys for this show. I'll tell you, thanks you so much for doing take two, and for Jerry with the Vocation Boom as well. Wonderful work, and for the great work we're doing in Catholic Radio with Jeanette as well, of course. And don't forget, you know, you can follow us not only at Catholic Radio, but check out our EWTN app at EWTN.com, and you get follow us on TV and radio using your iPhone or your Android or your iPad, whatever you'd like to do. And of course, we'll have more with all of our guests, and the World Meeting of Families continues from the Pennsylvania Convention Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're only halfway through the week. Stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us here. I'm on set with Jeanette Bankovic, coming to you from the World Meeting of Families from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as we continue here. And we've got the director of the World Meeting of Families Youth Congress, Maria Richardson, who we were billboarding earlier. She made it over here. It's a big crowd. You've got a lot to do, so we appreciate you finding the time.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, let me ask you, what is the World, we've got the World Meeting of Families here. There's a youth congress. So obviously it has something to do with young people. What are they doing? How is it different than the main? Is it just a youth track? How does it work?
They're doing so many things. The Youth Congress has 24 activities for the young people aged 6 through 17. There are 1,600 of them in the Youth Congress.
My goodness.
So their parents are able to bring them to us while they are enjoying these amazing speakers here. And in the Youth Congress, they are praying with paint, where they are painting pictures that will inspire faith and love in the family that they can take home and hang in their room. They are making World Mission rosaries, and we are teaching them about being a missionary by praying for children all around the world. And then some of the rosaries that they are making, we are actually delivering to the missionaries, to other children around the world. In the Fill a Bag, Fill a Heart, they are packaging socks and washcloths and snacks in a bag that they have decorated and said a little prayer with. And then they will be delivered to people around the Philadelphia area who are in need. And we also have Helping Hands, where they are packaging food that will be sent to Africa.
I saw that. I kept hearing this loud roar, and I figured I had to go find out what was going on. And I saw all these people packing and packing. And I went and asked, and they said that's what they were doing. It was amazing.
They're having so much fun. Every time I say to the young ones, how's your day going? They just are so excited. They don't know where to go next. And we're trying to lead and guide them, and they're just having so much fun. They're making Pope puppets to use on the parkway to welcome the Pope, and they are also making time capsules that they're decorating themselves, and they will write a letter to their future self about this experience and put it in their time capsule. They're collecting trinkets for their time capsule, and then they'll be taking that home to bury it and dig it up in 25 years to remember this family experience.
My goodness. Who's the creative genius behind all of these activities, Maria?
Can I say the Holy Spirit has been an amazing inspiration from before I went to interview for this position. The Lord was just filling my head with what this Youth Congress should be, and I have an amazing committee, and so they loved every idea, and we have been working on them for months. There are people throughout the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. We have 65 activity leaders that have been literally preparing their activities for the last 6 to 8 months. We've had children in our Catholic schools cutting pieces for the Pope puppets. We've had some of our college students painting a mural of St. Francis to teach the children about the life of St. Francis. And so there's so many people that have poured their heart and soul into this Youth Congress that it's not a surprise to me that the children are so overjoyed with this experience.
Now you talk about children, and I know it's got to have some young people there. I mean, younger children, because we know Pete the Penguin's over there, and it's always Brother Leo, so we know that's the age bracket.
Yes.
But what is the actual age bracket from what to what were included in the Youth Congress?
It's for young people aged 6 to 17, which was a challenge for us. And what we learned through the process is there are some things like painting a picture that is for all age groups together, so that's a great family activity for siblings. And then there are other things that are really for teenagers where they can have some serious conversation and hear some really great talks about things that are important to them, about the things that they are dealing with in their world and in their heart. And so we have Ascension Cafe, where we have speakers and musicians that are really just for the teenagers. And so we have Swinging with the Sisters dance party, where the sisters are doing hula hoop contests and line dancing with the older children. We have shooting hoops with the seminarians, where the young men can play basketball with some of the men who are in formation and some of our priests. We have Wii Bowling with the bishops, and they will be here tomorrow and on Friday, so we're very excited. I could go on and on. The activities are endless.
Can adults come down?
No.
And participate?
You know what's
Sounds like a lot of fun.
What's so funny about that is we have 733 adult volunteers that have volunteered. And so they are coming in and out through these 4 days. And they are truly having as much fun as the young people. They are working so hard and exerting so much energy. And they're going out the door saying, thank you so much. We had a great time. Thank you. We're coming back tomorrow, even though we didn't sign up. So the adults that we have invited to be chaperones and to be leaders in that area are having a great time, but you can't come in because you haven't been vetted to come in, and it's a very secure space.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Wow, okay.
And that's very good for people to know,
Yes,
Maria.
it is.
You know, that's
Yes,
very
it is.
important.
But maybe because you're you, we'll let you in.
Thank you. Well, let me ask you this question. Are all of these young people from the United States, or do you have other countries represented?
No, there are dozens and dozens of countries represented. We have young people who speak all different languages in the Youth Congress. We have some from Australia, we have them from Italy, we have them from Spain, we have them from Portugal. I could go on and on. The list is endless.
But children are children and youth are youth.
Absolutely.
And my guess is this is a great cultural experience for them. Do you see a lot of interaction?
Oh, absolutely. If they are 6 through 12, they're being put into a small group with a leader who is taking them from activity to activity. And so there's a great bonding experience happening. And even though every time they arrive, they are put into a different small group, they're already starting to look for friends from yesterday. And it's very exciting to watch.
Now, one of the things I was wondering about when you were talking about that, or that struck me as a really nice idea, not that they're all great, but the idea of, you know, with the sisters, with the line dancing, or playing basketball with the seminaries, or even seeing the bishop. Because one of the things from a vocational thing in the church anyway is, for us, many of us, we're old enough to have had priests or sisters who were teachers of ours, mentors of ours, and in that way had a positive relationship with them and see them that way. And today, many young people don't have that experience because there's not as many teaching sisters, there's not as many priests as there were before. Obviously, even some of the things that have gone on with the security stuff sometimes even impact those kind of things. So it's really great for them to be able to have that kind of, you know, non-traditional situation where they can meet the sisters or meet the future priests and realize that they're great people, they're special people, and that, you know what, maybe I'm one of those people.
And that they have great joy. Sister William Catherine put together Swinging with the Sisters, and when I left, they were doing a hula hoop contest, and half of them were doing the chicken dance, and they were having a great time. And to just see the joy that is pouring out of the sisters as they interact with the young people is just an amazing way to promote vocations and to say, we are joyful and we love the Lord and we are serving within this church, and you can too, and it is a life of great joy.
You know, Maria, it would be great to do a longitudinal study on these children to see how many of them actually do go into religious life and do go into the priesthood as a result of this. How many seeds are being planted here that may take root and produce a harvest of religious vocations? I can't help but think that that's a very real possibility.
Absolutely. Yesterday, as part of our prayer, we taught them the Divine Mercy Chaplet because as part of the sacramental scavenger hunt, they were finding pictures of the Divine Mercy, and they were finding booklets on how to pray the Divine Mercy. And so we sang it, and it was amazing how many of our young people already knew it and were able to participate, which tells me that the families here are really a hotbed of faith and that they are really bringing up their children with some great instruction in our faith, and that's very exciting.
You know, I have a suggestion for you.
Please.
You should write a book.
I should.
You should, and you should put in all of these different activities that you can do because they sound absolutely amazing.
And the stories of what the Lord has done is, I could go on and on, but yesterday, all of the young people were in, and we were down to one group leader left, and a gentleman came in with his two girls and said, our children only speak German. And I took a deep breath because I knew that I had no one waiting that spoke German. And the one sister, who was the only small group leader left, said, I speak fluent German. Wow. And I thought, oh my goodness, Hal, that is the Lord. And it's been, everything has been like that. Everything. It's been amazing. Oh my goodness. Really amazing.
Well, it's great to see. It's obviously to see the joy of so many people here and the joy exuded by yourself and the wonderful work. The children, when families are open to life and are open to their faith, it's amazing what the Holy Spirit will do. Thank you so much for your wonderful work, Maria Richardson, and work with the World Meeting of Families Youth Congress, and a successful week to you.
Thank you.
And
God
we'll have
bless
to
you.
let you go. Thank you so much. I'm here with Jeanette Benkovic, and this concludes EWTN's coverage for today of the World Meeting of Families, coming to you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. For more information on the World Meeting of Families, visit their website, worldmeeting2015.org. And the Twitter hashtag is WMOF15. And remember, for all the information on EWTN Radio and our EWTN app, which you should check out, and the latest programming information, always go to our EWTN website. It's very simple, EWTN.com, and our hashtag is EWTNWMF. For all of us here, the crew here in Philadelphia from the Convention Center, as well as our team in Birmingham, and for my co-host, Jeanette Benkovic, a true woman of grace, I'm Doug Heck. Thank you for joining us.